Welcome, and thank you for joining us for the 8th meeting of the New Bedford Light Fine Arts Club. Once again, we have an incredibly talented batch of artists, all first-time presenters this time, so that's pretty exciting. So, for one, I know I can't wait to hear the unique stories of how they found their passion, what inspires them, and how they make these incredible works of art a reality. Quickly, a little about the New Bedford Light. We're approaching our second birthday. In fact, you can join us June 22nd at the Black Whale for a birthday celebration with Emmy-winning journalist Charlene Hunter Gault. As a nonprofit, nonpartisan online news outlet, we are dedicated to informing readers about important issues in Greater New Bedford. When we're not tracking down landlords for stories on rising rents, or putting in public records requests about police misconduct, or shedding light on the inner workings of the waterfront, we strive to celebrate the cultural richness that makes New Bedford such a special place. And that's what brings us here, to the Fine Arts Club. Inspired by a Detroit breakfast fine arts club, we offer a place for artists to gather, share their experiences, and give us a peek into their process. And of course, sell some art. Everything you see today is for sale. That means you can take home anything that catches your eye or stirs your spirit. All you have to do is, well, actually, I'll scratch that. Ron will give you some specific instructions on how to purchase some art after I speak here. And we're also hoping you stick around after the presentations for the Afterglow, which is a loosely moderated discussion about topics in the local art scene. So now let's welcome our hosts, two talented artists in their own rights. Devin Yvette McLaughlin is a multifaceted artist based here in New Bedford. He uses an array of styles and mediums in his art, ranging from classical to abstract. Native to South Coast New England, he finds an endless source of inspiration in the surrounding mix of post-industrial cities, rural landscapes, and the Atlantic. Yvette's passions lie in connecting and developing creative communities and cultivating an appreciation for the arts. He is frequently involved in teaching painting workshops and educating individuals through schools, museums, and private instruction. Taylor Hickey is a printmaker, bookmaker, and sculptor working here in New Bedford. Born in Southeast Texas, she earned a bachelor's degree in drawing and printmaking from McNeese State University in Louisiana. She went on to earn a Master's of Fine Arts in Printmaking from UMass Dartmouth in 2021, developing a body of work that pays homage to the human endeavor in order to understand the universe at large. And here are our hosts.
Thank you so much. Welcome everybody. Again, we are here at the 8th installment of the Fine Arts Club. We have all new presenters, which is exciting. I'm going to go over a couple of quick things to kind of just make sure that everybody's on the same page here and we know how the night's going to flow a little bit. As Brendan mentioned here, each artist is going to have 5 minutes to speak about 2 pieces of artwork that they brought to us. Those pieces of artwork are for purchase. You'll have to talk to the artist afterwards to be able to purchase that artwork. Ron's going to come and talk to us a little bit more about that in a second. But during their speech or their talk about their artwork, they're going to explain something about each of their pieces. If you have questions, the artist will probably leave a little bit of room for you to talk about that. But if you don't get any of your questions answered at the afterglow, after every artist has had a chance to speak, that's the time where you can go ahead and approach them and talk to them about that extra stuff. When the artists come up, this is a note for them, when you're using your mic, don't keep it way over here, because it doesn't work. Keep it right underneath your mouth. That's going to mean that it can be heard over the PA system. As each artist comes up, they'll put their art on one of these 2 easels on the side here. As the artists leave, they'll take their artwork down and put it over to the side. And I ask that anybody coming up on stage today, because we have a little bit of a weird layout, go up through this side and come around, rather than on the 2 smaller ends. I don't want anyone falling. That sound fair, yes? Okay, good. So, I think I can hand it over to Ron now. Ron, if you want to come up and talk about how the sales are going to work.
I'll let you go on safety.
Yeah, the unsafe.
Hi, my name is Ron Fortier. My friend Henry Hopper, well, let me back up just a little bit. My wife is from Detroit, And during the pandemic, I was networking quite a bit before the pandemic in Detroit. And during the pandemic, obviously, there was not a lot you could do except through Zoom, and I really got to know Henry and his friend Harold. Two guys who were having breakfast. Henry has decorated the homes of the Ford family. He's taken apart Ford family homes. He's an antiquarian. And long story short, their breakfast turned into the Detroit Fine Arts Breakfast Club. They don't do breakfast anymore because they don't eat in the mornings anymore. But it's evolved quite a bit. In 10 years' time, from their founding to the pandemic in 2019, they've kept track of their sales. $9 million in sales.
Oh my goodness.
And for many of the young artists in Detroit, it was the first time ever. We've had the same exact situation here. First time ever in public showing their work. They haven't even hung in a gallery. So basically, this is not just show and tell, but this is show, tell, and sell. So when the artists are all done presenting a specific piece of work, for example, say this, and I'm asking $350 for it. If you like it and you're afraid somebody's going to scoop it from you, say sold. And then, in honor of Henry, because he told me the world needs more cowbell, he said that indicates that's been sold. It's a sealed deal. The artist and the buyer can now go off to a quiet location in the building and consummate their deal. Okay? Thank you so much.
Thank you. All right, our first artist up tonight is going to be Jes Fritze out of Dartmouth. Jes, you can come on up now. Jes's two pieces of work that she brought here are South End Pier over here. This is a 16 by 20. I think that you said that there was a little bit of a change in the program with that one, so she'll explain that. And then the other piece here is called Stillness, also a 16 by 20. So here you go, Jes.
Hi, everybody. I'm a local photographer from Dartmouth. Both these pieces are actually from Dartmouth and New Bedford. My first piece, there it is. That is the South End of New Bedford. If you're familiar with the South End, it's our famous South End Pier. It was probably one of my first attempts at long exposure photography. So that is that piece. My second piece is just my personal favorite. It's literally just an up close of a vine. But I like the feeling it gives. So that is my favorite piece. I'm short and sweet, so that's all I have. So this one right here, the South End, it was supposed to be printed on metal. It's still somewhere in the mail, so that is $200 currently, and that one I believe I have for $200.
Wow, I'll ring the bell.
As each artist is going to talk, there's an opportunity for questions. So if anybody has any questions before I start asking them a question.
Could you just talk quickly about why you used long exposure on that piece?
Something I just always wanted to try. One thing I like about photography, there's so many different facets, and long exposure is one. Always wanted to try it, so I don't know. That's just, again, an iconic spot if you're from the South End of New Bedford. So that's why I chose that. Yep, you're welcome.
I have a question, Jess.
Yeah.
Could I ask about your use of black and white as opposed to color photography?
So again, I think black and white is one of my favorite, my favorite photography, black and white.
So I have a question too. I actually have a couple. So you have on Stillness a little bit of a kind of a vignette. It's darker at the edges there, and that seems to be something that's more like a post-production or stylized thing. Can you explain how that was done?
Just Photoshop, messing around, new techniques, and I don't know, it just kind of worked with this photo.
It does. I really like the texture, and it kind of it lets it sink into the background a little bit.
It does, yeah, I believe so too.
Very nice. And one other question for me as well. What got you into photography? Moments?
Moments matter.
Love it.
So we should capture them.
Very good.
Yep.
Do Do you have any other questions from the crowd? All right. Thank you so much.
All right. Let me introduce our next artist of the night from New Bedford, our neighbor at Hatch Street Studios. Please welcome David Meyers.
Golf is it like a golf? No, it's golf. That's interesting. It's a hole.
So if I fall, this is the smallest fall. Hey gang, how's it going? So let's see. I'm an artist. I did my undergrad at Temple University in Philly. I went on to do grad school. I kind of just found art on a whim. I took a painting class because I couldn't get into a drawing class, and I just found my calling, so I followed it. A little bit of background. I work in the trades. I'm a carpenter, and when I'm not swinging a hammer, I'm in my studio working. These paintings, they come from this interest in this mix between highbrow and lowbrow. So I spend my time working in carpentry, and I'm swinging a hammer, dealing with the rough and tumble. But I'm also very interested in art history and this dialogue between. And I started getting really into my head and this idea of myth making and creating these narratives. And I just started to follow my nose and see where it went. I started out making really large oil paintings, and my craft side of the carpentry was split. But over time, they slowly came together. And after I made a series of welded works I called exploded drawings, I became more interested in a more sculptural approach to painting. I still see them all as paintings, even though they're dimensional. And now I see that a screw or a scrap of wood or something has the same weight as a brush stroke in terms of mark making. The one on the left, I was inspired by this kind of post-apocalyptic view of technology collapsing, the sense of play and violence, and what it might be like to be a cave painter in 2040 or something like that. And the one on the right, which I guess is y'all's left, I've been on this golf kick, and I've been thinking a lot about golf, because not many people make art about it. There's kind of this, I think it's a topical issue with resource allocation, land use, and all this stuff, as well as class and race that comes into what it means to play golf and drink a few beers. But I realized I was more interested in the landscape of golf than the actual game of golf. And I saw this as kind of a quest of a guy trying to hunt the ball through this creation-destruction scene. And yeah, I like to have fun with my work, and I think humor is a great way to view things. I'm not used to being in a pulpit. That's all I got. How much? Let's do 800 and 750. Come again?
You have prints of these.
I do not have prints of these, but I do have prints of my drawings. I do fabulous work with ink, and I've got prints of my drawings available online, and they're real fun and whimsical. And they're just $30. So on my website.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So, did anybody have any questions, though? All right. I had a question for you, though. Do you find that there's any kind of existing media that inspires the way that you lay things out, or the colors you choose, or how you do it? Or do you feel like it's all just from your process of going from painting onto the more dimensional things?
How these come about, it's interesting. I have a moment, for this one, I had the golf ball dinosaur guy, and I'm just looking at it, and it just starts to move, and it starts to shift and grow. My mind starts wandering as I start kind of grappling with these issues. I feel like as an artist, you always need to be challenging yourself. That you can't just be like, oh yeah, this is how I'm going to do it, but it's those complications that make it interesting. So I figure it out along the way is the best way to answer that. I don't always know how pieces are going to end, but I embrace that journey that takes you there. As far as it goes, I'm a romantic. I use a lot of upcycled materials, mostly from my job, side gigs, this and that. And I think that brings, it just brings something more to it than buying dimensional lumber at Home Depot and working from it. So I'm interested in that. And sometimes these things will sit in a corner, and sometimes I'll just drop two things next to each other, and something will emerge. And I think that's the beauty of art.
Thank you so much. Wonderful. Our next artist up is going to be Stephen Haywood from Randolph. The two paintings that are going to be going up are Deep Sea and The Birds of Paradise.
Oh boy. I really don't know where to begin, but all I can say is painting changed my life. I'm sorry. So I started painting 17 months ago. My wife gave me a Christmas present, and the next morning I woke up and I showed my wife two of the paintings that I did that night. And she said, "Oh, that's good." And that was encouraging for me because she's my worst critic. So the next morning I get up and I'm kind of enthralled with it, and I'm sitting there and I started painting, and a couple of hours later I looked down and I was like, oh wow, and it was Birds of Paradise, and I couldn't believe the painting that I just did. I got so excited about it. I ran in the house and I told my wife that I really love to paint now, and where do I get some supplies? She said, well, my favorite store is Hobby Lobby. You might want to go over there. So my journey over to Hobby Lobby, I went and I bought hundreds of dollars of supplies, and I bought ladles and paintbrushes and all kinds of canvases, and I was on vacation this time, so I had a chance to really get involved with the painting. And so when I brought when I brought the painting in to show my wife, she said, wow, you paint like Jackson Pollock. And I'm like, who is that? So I had no idea. So I went on and I painted the whole week, and I painted, oh, I don't know how many canvases, but I was so enthralled with it, and I just kept going. So my vacation was over, and I went to work, and I showed some of my stuff around, and so many people said, you paint like Jackson Pollock. And I'm like, that's interesting. I don't know who this artist is. So I continued to paint away, and then come April, I bring some paintings into my wife, and let me back up a little bit. So over the 4 months from December to April, every weekend, I was bringing in painting after painting to show my wife. Art show after art show. And in April, she says to me, Stephen, you might want to take a break. They're kind of getting out there a little bit. And I thought to myself, you're probably right. I was wrong. I went back to my shop. And the next morning, I hung a painting up. And Pamela says to me, oh, that one's really good. And I looked at her and I said, that was the painting I showed you last night. And she said, no, it's not. And actually it was not, because I altered it. And that's my painting I call Pink Passion. And that happens to be in my calendar that I have, that I had made. And I can pass this around to show you my calendar. So when she said that to me, the next weekend, I painted Deep Sea. When I paint, I don't have any thoughts in my mind. My mind is clear, and it just comes from my soul for what I do. I can't describe it. It's just one of these things that I let flow, and I let the paintbrush do its thing. So I got to the point, and I took a break, and I watched the Jackson Pollock movie, and I understand why people say that I paint somewhat like Jackson Pollock. So when I got my calendar, well, it was pretty interesting. I was sleeping, and my wife woke me up. You got to go to work. And then she says, Stephen, what's the date today? And I'm looking on the calendar and stuff. And she looks at me, Stephen, look again. And I said, what are you talking about? She said, that's your calendar. And I jumped up and down. I was so excited about it, and I was so thrilled. She says, what are you going to do with them? I said, I'm going to try to sell them for $20 to $10. And she said, Stephen, you're not going to sell those for $10. You probably should try to sell them for $5. And I says, okay. So off I went, and I sold 100 calendars in 10 days. I'm kind of losing my thought here. I'm so sorry.
Can you tell us about the two?
So, one of the things that I can't do is tell you how I painted it, because I don't know. Honestly, I just let the paintbrush and whatever tools that I'm using do the work. So I really have a hard time trying to describe how I paint. I just let my soul take over, and that's how they come out. So In closing, I just like to tell this story because if I never ever paint another painting, I will be so happy for what I have accomplished in the short time that I painted. I told one of my co-workers that I was painting, and I painted a rainbow. And she says, "Oh, my son loves rainbow, and he's on the spectrum." And I said, "Really? I'll give him a paint." And she said, "You will?" And the next day I brought it in, and the next day she comes and says, "Stephen, he loved it so much. He stayed up all night and stared at it." And that just joyed my heart. I could not believe how I made somebody feel so good with a painting that I just thought was ordinary. I was so excited. So the next year, my wife buys this gentleman a t-shirt with a painting on it. And this lady said to me just the other day, "He has not taken it off since you gave this shirt to me." And she says, "I have to wash it every night. I'm so glad it's adorable." And that just makes all it worth it. And I'm so happy I was able to make somebody happy with some of the work that I do. And I really appreciate the time and everything. And if you have any questions, feel free to ask.
How much? That's the only question I have to focus on. How much?
So this one's $1,000, and this one is $500.
Beautiful.
The
Thank
one
you.
in the glass print, or is that an original?
This is original. That's the original. That's my third painting that I did, and it is original.
Thank you.
Yes, it is.
Good.
Question here.
What sort of environment do you surround yourself with in the studio? Are you listening to music?
That's a good question. It varies from session to session. Most of the time, I try to paint with no noise. So it's a total blank screen in terms of my mind state and what I'm trying to accomplish. So most of the time, I'm in a quiet state.
I have a quick question for you, Stephen. I was curious about this Birds of Paradise line here. Is this on black paper?
No, it's not.
Okay, there's just like such a buildup of color and depth to it. And I like that this one is on the black canvas.
Yeah, this is on the
So,
black
yeah.
canvas, and this guy is not.
Okay, great. Do you have a preference for working like on black, on white, on paper, on canvas? Or?
No, I find all of it exhilarating. It does not matter, the canvas, the size, it all does not matter. And one of the things when I do paint, I don't have a color scheme. I just let the colors come to me, which I find very interesting because I never thought that I knew anything about color. But again, I don't pick this color and that color. I just let it flow, and it comes all from my soul.
Thank you. Very intuitive. I love it.
Thank you.
All right.
I
Any more
appreciate it.
questions from our audience?
I have a comment / question. You said you started this about 17 months ago because your wife bought painting supplies for you, or artistic supplies. Have you thanked her enough for that?
I have, but the constant art shows that I show her, sometimes it gets a little overwhelming for her, and she was like, "It's enough, it's enough." And I do get it, because since then I painted 267 paintings.
Yeah, the house is overwhelmed. Please buy. Yeah, we're running out of space.
We've got one over here in the back.
Hi.
You said you started 17 months ago, is that correct?
That's correct.
Did you have artistic tendencies prior to this? Did you do other artistic endeavors of anything? Where did did you have, has it always been in you?
That's a very good question.
Thank you.
I'm gonna say no to that, but this is really not art, but I built stone walls in my backyard, and I collected all the stones from various locations, and I just started building walls with no glue or anything. And I think some of that has turned into artwork that I create.
He got too old in the store.
Thank you, I really appreciate it. One other thing, if somebody buys one of my paintings tonight, I will give a calendar going forward until I stop painting.
All right, our next artist of the night, coming from Dartmouth, we have James Correia. I always love seeing the scale. You can't tell from the images how big they're going to be.
They did. They did.
How's everybody doing tonight? My name's Jim. I'm a local photographer. I was born and raised in Bedford. I live in Dartmouth now. I've been doing photography probably 25, 30 years, you know, just as a hobby and stuff like that. It is a passion of mine. I can't stop taking pictures. I love taking pictures of people. You know, now I like taking pictures of birds and wildlife and stuff like that. These two particular prints here on canvas, it's Crazy Lace. I was walking around my kitchen one day and I decided to grab a magnifying glass and just look at the stone, you know, see all the little designs in it and stuff like that. And ended up breaking out my macro lens, and there they are.
Wow. Those are beautiful.
I love macro photography. It's a whole different world out there.
Beautiful.
You get to see things that you don't normally see. You know, you slow down, lay on the stone, and look at the little things. They're pretty amazing. So I've been recently dabbling in black and white photography, which is really nice. That's about it. I'm used to being behind the camera, not talking. I'm a quiet guy. You just hear the click, and that's pretty much how I communicate. Anybody have any questions?
So how did you get into photography?
It's just something I've always liked as a teenager. I had a little chin in camera, film stuff, and I have to look up. Then I had kids, and I used to photograph them a lot. I worked down in the state for about 30 years in South Dartmouth, and the person I worked for was an elderly person. You know, and she loved nature, she loved natural stuff, and she couldn't get out as much, so she kind of used me as her eyes. So
That's interesting.
Yeah.
It's all about seeing
It's all about seeing and telling stories.
and getting super close. So do you do other kinds of photography?
I do portraits. I've done weddings in the past. I like to do volunteer work. I've done a lot of stuff for old-timers, you know, photograph their events and stuff like that. Buzzards Bay Coalition, I do some of their you know, events. I do wildlife, macro, you know, whatever I can get my camera to point at, basically. Yeah. So that's a Crazy Lace agate.
When you usually put your photographs on, do you usually put it on canvas or?
I do canvas, not all the time. You know, I print them mostly at my house. I have a 4x18 format. I love printing because it's actually the finishing touch. It's like the frosting on the cake. I find, you know, it's part of the creativity. But I've just recently started using the floating frames on the canvas, which I find really nice. Sort of has a finishing touch to it. So, and I do have a show next month downstairs. If you want to come and join me. It's the show. 325, 325. Crazy lace agate.
Is it that stone?
It happens to be this stone right here.
Wow.
Yeah. So if you look at it real closely, you'll see the,
Wow.
you know, you have to find them, so I'm not gonna tell you where they are.
Did you think hard about the composition, obviously?
Yeah, you shoot at a certain area, you know, and then once you get it on the computer, you can sort of compose it a little bit. You gotta, you know, yeah, I did think a lot about the composition.
Grow.
Yeah, that one actually looks like a pond to me. I happen to like that color on that. This one here is a little bit more vibrant, but you can see the detail, you know, different depths of the stone, yeah. Any more questions? Okay, guess I'm good to go.
Thank you very much. The next artist that we're going to have up is Janet Adduci from Carver. So Janet, if you want to bring your artwork up and put them on the easels here, we can get started on that one. It's become kind of standard practice that Ron just asks how much a piece is. But reminder, the prices are in your brochures, so if you don't remember how much something costs, you want to double check, you can always take a look in that. It has all the information you need about the artist, how to contact them, and also the prices that were posted for tonight.
Hi, my name is Janet Adduci, from Carver, Massachusetts. I'm also an art educator. I teach middle school. I've been trained traditionally. I went to the University of Hartford, the Hartford Art School. I have a BFA from there, and then I have a Master's of Arts in Teaching from Bridgewater State University. I don't normally paint this way. This was something that kind of was born out of the pandemic and some grief that I was experiencing with the death of my mom. And the first painting, which isn't for sale, was created with her jewelry and some of my jewelry. And from that, I found it to be very soothing and meditative to kind of put the pieces together. Normally, I paint more realistically, but painterly, I guess. Very brushy, brush strokes. And I find that this is a little bit less judgmental. I judge myself less doing this because when I'm painting something from life, I tend to be like, oh, that's not exactly right, or I keep kind of questioning myself and redoing. With this, I start with color. Again, color is a big part of my art. A lot of complementary colors. My other paintings are really bright as well, prior to this style that I've been doing. But I've kind of taken with this style due to that meditative and calming way it makes me feel. Like I start with the paint, and I might start with collage, and you know, some things people give me. I have a lot of friends that supply me with odd things now when they see my painting. So this was my first experience with resin, which I enjoyed. I did some quilling of paper and then put that down and then used resin on top and moved the canvas around. So it's kind of a different experience for me as opposed to what I'm used to doing. And I've been doing this for about 3 years now, so I have a good amount of paintings in this style. And I just plan on continuing it for a while until it doesn't feel right anymore. Right now it feels good, so I'm just keeping going. I don't know if it's something or not. It's just what turns out. I don't necessarily have a plan in the beginning. This one here is just a breeze over the ocean. Mainly, I think my inspiration was a trip that I took to the Outer Banks. My daughter had collected a jar of sand from the beach, and I wanted to somehow use that. So the sand is under there somewhere in the resin, and then it just kind of built from that. The mirror is actually from a broken mirror. I accidentally broke one of my mom's mirrors, and my husband said, "Hey, I gotta throw this away." And I said, "Don't throw that away, I'm gonna use that in something." So that does have a piece of my mom in it there. And this one is just a landscape of flowers with collage pieces of different papers that I also had donated to me. So I just kind of collect stuff. That's about it.
Thank you, Janet. Do we have any questions from our audience? I have not really a question, but I just love that phrase of "don't throw that away." I'm going to use that. I feel like so many of us here have probably said that. I also think it's really cool that you're like branching out and trying something that's a little more fun, that's like liberating for you. It's a very material kind of thing to work with too, resin.
There's a lot of rearranging too, like taking a photograph even, like, not sure, still questioning myself, but take a photograph, look at it, maybe I need to move these things. Like, I don't glue it down for a while.
Yeah.
It moves around a lot.
Can I ask how you got into resin, if that's something that you had tried before?
Resin, you know, it's funny, I saw it over here, and I was like, it was a painting in one of the rooms here, and I really loved how it kept everything on the canvas. It was like really heavy stuff, nuts and bolts. I don't know what I'm talking about. It was like a bearded. Yeah, it was. It was over there. And I was like, wow, I never used to try that. So I've been using it. I have these grommet paintings that are ornaments. They're more abstract, and I use it there. It's very sticky, and my husband will tell you after I use it in the sink, it's pretty much coated with it. So yeah,
it's worth it.
Yeah, I love it. I do. I love it. And I just love moving the canvas with it too. It's fun, you know, just to see where it falls. But thank you for having me.
All right, folks, let's welcome our last artist of the night, Gallery X's own Zachary White from New Bedford, to show us some monoprints, so you know I'm excited.
And just a quick factoid, in 8 months, and we're still in our introductory stage, the 4 stages of business, we're still in the first stage. In these 8 months, we have sold $5,000 of our work. So hopefully we'll continue to grow as an outlet for artists to sell their own work.
Like I said, I am a member here at Gallery X. I originally went to school at UMass Dartmouth for photography, and I ended up taking a lot of printmaking classes. Went back, did another year as a post-bac, and worked with the printmaking professor Mark St. Pierre, who's passed away a couple of years ago now. And when I was doing the work, my photography always had a lot to do with New Bedford. My thesis was on actually urban renewal in New Bedford, so a lot of 1960s photos paired with what it is now. And so then I tried to kind of combine that with printmaking, so I did a lot of maps, map making, and so the first thing I did was this board here, which is a woodblock MDF carved CNC router, carved by CNC router, and so that is what I used to print the fabric. And I did a whole series of, they're all, none of them the same, that's what, it's a monoprint, so it's from the same block, but they all have their different variations, color, texture, and so those were kind of like these tapestries I came up with. And then from there, I actually made a 11-foot map, also with a CNC router, which is on view at the Economic Development Center in their lobby, and though it is for sale. And so from that, I kind of then used those 2 blocks and started to just print various sections of it, which is what that smaller piece is. And so that's a combination of silk screen. That one, I know it's 2 layers of silk screen, and then I think there's 1 layer of the wood block, and then I have other versions similar to that that are those are all handmade papers. And yeah. And I have $235 on the fabric map, and the small piece is $175. There are other colors available too.
Thank you, Zach. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Do we have any questions from the audience?
So can you just tell me about the monoprint or how?
So with this block, so I ended up, I wanted to do the city of New Bedford. So I had a paper map of the city, ended up using that scanned in with Google Maps, and I relayed the city so it is to scale vertically. It is not to scale, the streets are not to scale their width-wise, but their length-wise they are. And so then that was all drawn in Photoshop and InDesign, and then transferred to the computer where it was carved into this board. And so now it's kind of just a big stamp.
Is it, what is the board? Is it wood?
It's MDF, fake wood, yeah.
Zachary, do you have more monoprints for sale outside of this?
Yeah, so I have a series of various different colors of the fabric. These, I have a few others that are not framed, but they're all different colors, different sections of the city. So this one is mostly Ward 4 and into the north end. I'm trying to remember which one it is. But you see, this is the area around the high school, and this is the far north end where Patrick Boulevard meets Route 18.
Is most of your print work revolving around maps?
Yeah, for the most part, even when I was doing I did a series of screen prints that were, I drew on the screen print and then made it into a printable, and those are all kind of mapping spaces, whether they're literal maps or just the idea of mapping a space, but it does always have to do with maps in some way.
I have a question, or maybe more of a thought, but I'm curious if you think about like the nature of a monoprint being something that is both reproduced and accessible, but also unique, because it's a monoprint, it's made from the same block as other prints, but it's got its own unique elements to each one. So I was wondering if you could talk about that.
Yeah, so when I initially in school, it was I took basically every printmaking class there was, and then it would kind of just be like, just start experimenting a while with it, and then it's like, those are things, those are monoprints and monotypes, and then took classes in those, and it's less stressful because if there's variations in it, it's expected, and it's makes it a little more interesting. It's something that works, and if it didn't work, you just don't need to have 20 copies of it. So, and this, it also, with the materials, especially like the handmade paper, like you could make something similar to it, but you'll never get it the same way because of the handmade material. So when I would do these, it was, like that was how the paper came out. Like I didn't cut it to anything, and it just was how the paper came, the edges were that way, and then I just print or draw on it as it was. And so I think it kind of made the process more freeing, I guess.
Yeah, and they're one of a kind, which is very cool. All right. Thank you very much, Zach. so that concludes our artist presentations for the night, but do stick around, talk to the artists, ask them questions that you didn't get to ask them, hang out, have some hummus, have some water. This is what we call the afterglow, so we're gonna stick around for another half hour or so, hang out, and thank you all very much for coming. And our next meeting will be in July, correct? July 20th. Co-Creative Center, downtown New Bedford.